Good evening, everyone. We're going to call the meeting to order, and we'll start with the land acknowledgement statement. Are we good? Okay. We acknowledge that the ground on which we live is the traditional territory of Caldwell First Nation, of the Three Fires Confederacy, and the original people of Point Pelee and Pelee Island and its surrounding lands and waters, and that of the Huron-Wendat and Wyandot peoples. We recognize and respect the First Nations who are stewards of the land and waters of Turtle Island and who have embraced this stewardship since time immemorial. We would also like to acknowledge the contributions of other nearby First Nation communities and all original people across Turtle Island. We will now have a moment of silent reflection, followed by the playing of our national anthem. Please stand for the playing of the national anthem. We can start with the adoption of our agenda. So the February 27th, 2024 regular council meeting agenda be adopted as presented. Councillor Richo-Spagnolo, support. Councillor Carrick, all in favor? And that carries. Any disclosures of community interest? There being none, if we can get an adoption of the minutes of the closed and regular meeting of council held February 13th, 2024 be adopted as presented. Councillor Burns. And yes. Support, Councillor Richo-Spagnolo, all in favor, and that carries. Mayor's comments. To start, we have Councillor Desjardins away at a conference, and Councillor Renault is on a personal leave. As many of you, I'm sure, have seen the videos or heard, we did have an incident this Sunday at the Valmer with a deer jumping through a window into our pool. So it was definitely something we weren't trained for or ready for, but I can honestly say that the staff at the Valmer did an absolutely amazing job staying calm, keeping our patrons safe, and removing the deer from the facility without any injuries. So thank you to all our staff. The pool has reopened. We did close it today. Again, there was a scuba diver who came in to go through and be sure there was no other glass pieces on the bottom of the pool so that it is safe to reopen for our patrons. So thank you to everybody who was involved in that. Last week, I did my first what we call Mayor on Location, which was held at the Valmer during the Vipers game. And it was a great evening just to meet with residents, and some of them came and just wanted to talk about everyday stuff. Some of them wanted to bring up issues that they didn't get to come to a Monday with the Mayor. And so we're going to continue to do those through the year. The next one will probably be in the summer at a different location so that I can continue to meet people around the town. And finally, coming up, we have March break. We want to remind everyone of the Sean Kenny's Animal Superpowers made with Lego bricks, where during March break, the event will be open from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m., same as Family Day, and we had a great turnout on Family Day. The regular general admission continues after that every Thursday, Friday from 5 to 9, and Saturday and Sunday from 9 to 3 until April the 6th. And then finally, just a reminder that the Vollmer Center is open during March break and has recreational swim and skate scheduled. And the schedule is on our website, and we do recommend that you pre-register as we do get a very high turnout for those events. So just for information, and that's all I have for today. With that, we have no public meetings or hearings, presentations or delegations, so we're going to move into staff reports and correspondence for council's action, with item 1 being the Skate Trail Tender Award, and I'm going to turn it over to the Deputy CAO, Mr. Mara.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tonight's report regarding the Skate Trail Tendering Award is the next milestone with respect to seeing this project come to fruition. The town went out for public tenders back on December 20th in 2023. Tenders did close on February 8th, 2024. As part of the tendering process, 6 submissions were received, and those are summarized within the report. There was a low bid submitted by Valente Contracting, Inc. for $8.88 million. J.P. Thompson, who is the architect who is assisting the town with contract administration for this project, has reviewed the tenders and has confirmed with Valente Contracting that they are comfortable with their submission and capable of moving forward with the construction of this skate trail project. The skate trail project also includes the splash pad that is being sponsored by the Rotary Club of LaSalle. So with that, the recommendation of tonight's report is for council to award the skate trail project to Valente Contracting, Inc. for $8.88 million, and that is excluding taxes. As of particular note, there is additional information within this report, and it is really provided for council's information. So as part of the tendering process, we did put in some additional provisional pricing as part of the overall tendering process. And that was for a backup standby generator. The purpose for this backup standby generator was to provide emergency power to both the event center and as well as the ice plant in the future. It does also provide some backup power for some various other aspects with respect to the warming hut and some future pump stations. At this point in time, that generator, we are not required or obligated to proceed with that awarding of that particular item. So we're going to hold that in abeyance as of right now. But for council's information, that price submitted by Valente Contracting, Inc. was $1.11 million, and that's very consistent amongst all the six submissions. So it is in line with what was provided for that provisional pricing. As part of the provisional pricing, administration will be reviewing how best to, if we can bring that forward in the current allocated monies within the budget. We are currently doing that analysis, and if that is the case, we'll be back before council for awarding that additional price. So with that, the recommendation again is to award the contract to Valente Contracting, Inc. for $8.88 million plus taxes. With respect to the budget, we had $9 million budgeted for this project, and that has been built into the budgets to date, and so we are within budget to bring this forward. So with that, I'm available for any questions. There is a slide. Maybe if IT can bring up the slide, there is an item or an image of what the skate trail will be, and as soon as they bring it up, you'll see what is incorporated into the project. So there's the slide that is available. So everything within the slide you can see in the image. To the right-hand side of the image is front road. To the back and top of the image, you can see the existing event center. So anything between coming from the existing event center towards the bottom edge of the image is all included within the $8.88 million. So with that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Carrick.
Through your worship, to Peter. So we committed to this, and I'm okay with supporting this. I guess the question I have is, at this point, where are we at with the budget that we've brought forward so far for the waterfront? Because at the end, this is an awful lot of money, and we spent a lot of money, and I just want to make sure that as we move forward, that perhaps maybe after this we can look at a pause, just to maybe rethink some options or maybe slow some stuff down. Because it's getting to the point now where it's like really expanding a lot, and it's not cheap. But we did commit to this, and I will support committing to this. But I just want to know where we're at And my concern is that we need to pause, we need to rethink or something. We can get together and maybe look at some of the stuff that was brought forward to council and administration through the public too, that we can also look at down the road. That's where I'm at. If you could answer some of those questions, it would be great. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Clerk, through you, Madam Mayor. This project is built into the current business plan that council had approved, so there is money available for this particular project. There are other aspects of that original business plan that have not been carried forward to date. Administration is looking at the overall project as we see it today, and looking at future phases and what that might be, and we will be back before council with what to expect over the coming years, and obviously that would come with council's endorsement of what money would be available for us as well for future budgets. So that will be a formal report coming back before council. We are at the point of starting to wrangle some of that information together and come back before council with the image and showing the various aspects of what will either be put on hold and what will be delayed and or move forward. So we'll be back before council with that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Burns?
Yes. We went over this with Mr. Maher and the Accessibility Committee. The outside sidewalk is, I believe, cement. It's only 5 feet wide. And I would prefer that we put an asphalt sidewalk in there that's 8 feet wide so that it's wide enough for 2 people my size, me and my bride, to be able to walk down there instead of one in the snow, out of the snow if we get some, or half on the grass. I brought the same concern up at the Accessibility Committee, and I'm wondering if that is durable and can be done. And I would be prepared, after I hear your answer, to make a motion for that or against that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Burns. Maybe I can request that the image be put back up on the screen, and I can kind of explain Councilor Burns' concern. So as part of some of the information, so you can see within the skate trail is the darker gray. That is a 16-foot wide concrete surface. And then in between that large surface, there is a landscape buffer of about 2 to 3 feet wide. And then there's a parallel sidewalk, which is 6 feet wide, and it is concrete. The 6 feet wide is sufficient for two-way traffic. Our municipal sidewalks that we build on the municipal right-of-ways are only 5 feet wide, so this is 1 foot wider. Certainly, through council's discretion, we can review modifying that, making that wider. Obviously, that would have impacts on the costing and the pricing, so we can certainly bring that forward if council wishes. But through the requirements of accessibility, it meets all the various requirements. In addition, just alone on the sidewalk along Front Road, that's only 5 feet wide, so it's already wider than the sidewalk along Front Road. That's probably not a good example because that is an older sidewalk along a busy road, but it's to give you a frame of reference of what is there. And really, during that would primarily be used for walking in the wintertime when the ice is in the ice trail area, but all other times of the year, both surfaces would be available to walk on and have plenty of room to move around. So certainly, through council's pleasure, if they wish to provide that direction, we can bring that forward and make sure that that gets implemented within the design and the construction and pay the additional money accordingly.
Follow up?
A follow-up. I'm glad you brought up Front Road because I'm going to say from at least Victory to Petromoose Corners, for those that know that name, or Malden Road and Front Road, I think it's about 4 feet wide, and it's nothing but a disaster. And it's along a 2-lane highway, and I would be hard-pressed to see anybody my size and somebody a little smaller than me, even my grandkids, trying to walk that and feel safe. It's only single file. So when the time comes due, after we do this, I will enter a motion to look and get a price on asphalt versus cement, and at 8 feet wide. Thank you.
Councillor Reacher Spagnolo.
Thank you, through you to Mr. Mara. The pavilion area there, is that included in the $8 million? Is, like, I don't know if that's a warming station pavilion area, is that included in that amount of the 8.8 million?
Thank you for the question. So everything within the image is included in the 8.8. There is no warming hut available at this time. That building that you see in the background is the ice plant that will contain the refrigeration equipment and the water feature equipment to deal with the splash pad sprinklers within that circular area. Also, as part of that building, there are 4 washrooms along the west edge of that building. Back in April, back a few months ago, administration came to council with an update on the budget, and there was a proposed warming pavilion that was part of this project. That pavilion was estimated to be at $2.5 million, along with the $9 million for the skate trail. It wasn't going to fit within budget. So we've removed the pavilion, the warming hut pavilion. As of right now, we are looking at alternatives on what we can do to introduce something on a temporary basis. But again, we will be back before council with the overall expectations, next phases, budgeting, and things of that nature to see how we can accelerate and bring something of that nature forward.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Carrick?
Just overall, I mean, it's a lot of money, and for me, the way I think, but it's going to be a great addition, and I think it'll be awesome for downtown on the waterfront as we move forward.
Thank you very much. I think we all agree with that sentiment as far as it's been 2 years in the making, and we've budgeted for this, knowing the cost and knowing that it is going to transform an area of our town that we haven't focused on in a really long time. I think our only mistake going forward with this was we keep calling it a skate trail. And I think it's misleading to a lot of people who haven't had the chance to see the photo or see the design. We probably should have called it the year-round multi-use trail with a water feature. And I think it would have helped explain to people that this isn't just a skate trail. This is supposed to be a year-round facility for our residents to use, whether you're from LaSalle or you're from Essex County, to come visit and support our local businesses. And hopefully as we grow, more businesses will relocate to Front Road. So I think that's a really important part of why we're investing in that Front Road area. There is a recommendation in front of you. So the recommendation reads that the report of the Deputy CAO dated February 12, 2024 regarding the Skate Trail Tender Award be received, and that council awards the skate trail project to Valente Contracting Incorporated in the amount of $8.880, excluding HST, and authorizes the mayor and clerk to execute the contract on behalf of the town. So that is the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Richo Spagnolo, support. Oh. Yep. No, it's on the next item. That's okay. Support was Councillor Carrick. All in favor? When no one's opposed, that carries. Item 2 is also the LaSalle Landing. It's the memorial relocations.
Your worship, a point of order. Is it now time for me to make that motion to look at the 8-foot? Because if we've just approved this with a cement one, so where do we go with the asphalt around the outside? Do we make a motion now as a supplementary, or do we do that under new business later on in the program? Looking for...
It would be appropriate now if you want to make a motion of some sort to that.
I would make a motion that we look at an 8-foot trail on the outside of the event center trail, and that it be in asphalt, and that we get a costing on it to see versus the cement, please. Thank you.
So that's moved by Councillor Burns and supported by Councillor Carrick. Any discussion on that? I guess I have one quick question. What does that do to what we just did by approving the tender that was put forth? Does that change what we've approved or the timeline?
Thank you. It would not change the timeline. If that is a change that council wishes to implement, we would just implement it through a change order request through the contractor. I would just look to see if council is looking to have a report back on that, what that will be before we issue that change order, or whether that is just something that would be left to administration to proceed with if it continues to fit within allocated monies and budgeted for this project. So if council can maybe provide some direction on that, this way we know whether we come back or if we just deal with it as a change order through the contract.
Councillor Burns, it's your motion if there's something.
I would like to see a report come back, and then we can, we'll know exactly where we stand, cost-wise. Thank you.
Okay with me.
Okay. Did you want to add anything? No. Okay, so we have a mover, we have a seconder, all in favor? And that carries as well. Yeah. So item 2, LaSalle Landing Memorial relocations, and back to Mr. Mara.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There is another presentation to display on the screen, and while that is coming up, I'll start the background information on this report. So this is part of what Council just approved. As part of that project, the Skate Trail Water Feature project within that particular area, there are a number of existing tree memorials that are present within that particular area. As it is throughout the entire property that is referred to as the LaSalle Landing, there are memorial trees and benches and plaques throughout the entire LaSalle Landing. But in particular, there are about 17 that are going to be affected as part of this skate trail project. So administration was working with the existing memorial owners who we have been able to make contact with. Some of them, Ms. Hodre will provide a bit of an update on the number of people that we were able to make contact with. So this is a proposal at this point in time to replace what is going to be disrupted as part of the skate trail. As we progress through future phases throughout the LaSalle Landing project, there are going to be other memorials that are going to be affected by various phases when we get to those phases. So as we get phase by phase and we identify what particular memorials are going to be affected, we will be back before council and making contact with the next of kin of those memorials on what we propose to introduce for replacements of those particular memorials. So with that, for this particular area as part of the project, and it is included in the $8.88 million that council just approved, there is an introduction of a garden. The purpose of this garden is to replace the memorials that are currently existing out there. The garden is a little bit more prevalent and upfront and available and more accessible than the current memorials that are at the base of existing trees. With respect to the area, it is proposed to be a garden with 3 large butterfly sculptures as part of it. So the garden is meant to provide an opportunity to recognize the existing memorials. So with that, we would be putting in some plaques and things of that nature. So on the screen, you'll see where that is located. So that is located at basically the junction of where the skate trail comes along and meets up with the water feature. And maybe the next slide, please. So it kind of shows you where the plaques are going to be presented for recognizing the existing memorial that are out there, and as well as there's a tree that is being dedicated as part of the Rotary. Next slide, please. This continues to give you a number of images that are available. So this is located towards the southeast edge of the project. It is approximately 80 feet off the edge of Front Road is where this will be located. And it's really meant to be a garden that is going to have a number of flowers. Those are flowers that are going to be pollinator flowers, so it's going to attract a number of insects, in particular, in possibility with butterflies and bees and things of that nature, and certainly the sculptures themselves are going to be of butterflies. The purpose of this is to, as future replacements get introduced, there's an opportunity to continue to introduce more art in this fashion in some of those other areas. So this is just kind of an introduction to that process. Next slide, please. And this continues to just give you a number of various images of what that will look like. So with that, maybe I'll pass it off to Ms. Hodre, and she can give us an update on where we're at with respect to communication, and certainly that communication that we've had with the existing Nexakim has been updated since the writing of this report.
Thank you, Mr. Mara. So Mayor Meloche and members of council, as Mr. Mara mentioned, there are 17 trees that are located within this area. We have made contact with families of 12 of those trees. We have leads on 2 more, so leaving 3 that we're still searching for. Most of these trees were planted back in the early 90s, so we don't have a lot of records to reach families for them. But we've done quite well in reaching, finding who we could. So all that we have spoken to are very understanding of the project and why the trees need to be removed and the plaques, and how we're changing the project. We have shown the renderings to them as well, and they're all in agreement and like the idea of having that garden area. And I think that they actually appreciate that they won't have to dig out the plaques should they go to visit the area. There's a bench right there as well that they would have a spot to sit in that area. So we're going to continue to work to contact all of the families as best as we can and provide that information to them so that we can move the project forward. I am available, and Mr. Mara is available if you have questions.
So with that, Madam Mayor, that concludes the presentation. The recommendation before you is that council receive this report and that council approve and concur with the approach for this memorial replacement garden as part of the skate trail project. And I understand that there's a delegation that wishes to speak to this matter as well.
Thank you. So before I go to council, I'm going to request our delegate come forward. So we have Ms. Dillon here to share some information on butterfly gardens and placements of it. So I don't believe we need address or anything. We have everything, so go ahead.
Hello. Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. I want to first say I congratulate you with being a community that's welcoming the butterflies. I don't know if you know this, but for 17 years I've been studying butterflies in LaSalle. And we are the first community often in Canada that's welcoming the monarchs back to Canada. They cross over Fighting Island and they come into our community. So in front of you, I've given you a little bit of did you knows about butterflies and what they require for a good place to have habitat built. I couldn't really tell from the renderings when I was looking online where exactly the butterfly garden was located. It looked pretty close to Front Road. And now I'm hearing it's 80 feet, so 80 feet's a good distance. And it looks also like there's some good tree barriers. So I suggest that when the time comes, if you'd like to have some input on the garden, you know, I'm available. I think it's really important to lead Canada in the community to help butterflies in nature. There's a good that can come from it, right? So you know, well, some of you would know that I have the gift shop on Front Road. So to give you an idea, that shop took 8 years to get butterflies. We started with 28 butterflies and ended up with 1,700 a year in that little small location. So you have the ability to really be a leader in conservation here because of where this garden's located. Do you have any questions for me? I've been studying butterflies for 48 years. So to give you an idea, the property on Front Road can get 2 giant swallowtail eggs a season, which sounds like nothing because it is nothing. On Pelee Island, I now have a 3rd-year project. I can get between 6 and 100 eggs a day for giant swallowtails. So if you process that, that means that the garden you're building is massively important. You know, you can actually save species. And I've had the opportunity to walk with people that are PhDs in butterflies. They've written books on one butterfly. 2017, there was a massive fire near the butterfly that they wrote their PhD on, and it's extirpated for good from the planet. So it's a very serious task that you guys have to protect our butterflies. We should have a lot of butterflies here. We shouldn't be hearing people say, where are the butterflies? And so this not only can extend from your waterfront project, but all the way through LaSalle, going down Laurier. I once tracked a butterfly all the way from Front Road. She went down Laurier over to Buford and kept going. So we have a responsibility to the future for your grandchildren, right? Any questions?
Members of council, any questions? No?
No curious people in the room? Oh, God. Did I give up my 5 minutes so quick?
No, I think this is something we've definitely talked about with the project as a whole. And if I remember correctly, maybe Mr. Mara could help me along. There are other areas in this project we've spoke about doing more natural areas that I believe are even closer to the water, further from front.
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you for the question. That is correct. As the entire 60 acres develops, there are going to be a number of phases. This is just particularly one phase, but there are going to be a number of areas that are going to be naturalized and/or left in their natural state. There is going to be a number of opportunities to create other gardens throughout the area, right along the water, along the number of trails that are going to be through this area. As the area in 60 acres continues to mature, you'll start to see those aspects being added. Again, last year we added a butterfly garden in at the Vollmer, away from traffic, and that was part of another sponsorship that we took advantage of and wanted to create a nice, serene atmosphere for reflection and reflection in honoring our deceased members of our families through Families First, and certainly that opportunity is available, and we've created a butterfly garden there. And so there are opportunities as these projects are introduced to continue to expand and introduce various pollinator gardens and things of that nature throughout the town and throughout our parks.
Thank you. So we agree with you. We know it's important to our community, and we are looking at ways of continuing to conserve and improve areas, whether it be at Front Road or, like Mr. Mara said, at Laurier. I'm not sure if you know where that garden is he's speaking of. So if you were to go near the baseball diamonds, between the baseball diamonds and the retention pond, I guess is the best way to explain it, there's a hill, and I'm forgetting the name of what that area, the Hearts.
Healing Hearts.
Healing Hearts.
Healing Hearts
I should
gazebo.
have known that. It's the Healing Hearts area, and it was a beautiful area that was sponsored to allow places for our residents to go and connect and grieve, and so feel free to go and walk and see what's happened there, and it's continuing to grow. Obviously, it's new, so there's lots of growth still needed, but it is a great new area as well for that. So thank you very much for your presentation and bringing it forward, and we look forward to continuing the research.
Thank you.
Members of council, do you have any other questions regarding the butterflies or the memorial relocations? There being none, there is a recommendation in front of you that the report of Deputy CAO and the Director of Strategy Engagement dated February 12, 2024 regarding LaSalle Landing Memorial relocations, skate trail phase be received, and that council concurs with the proposed approach for memorial replacement as part of the skate trail construction. Moved by Councilor Ricci Spignolo, support by Deputy Mayor Acapata. All in favor? And that carries as well. So moving on, we have item 3, which is a zoning bylaw amendment application, Crossing View Development Phase 1, and we will have the Director of Planning and Development, Ms. Beggs.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. This report deals with a rezoning application that we heard previously last year at a public planning committee meeting. So just run through a quick presentation of the report. So the property is shown on the aerial photo on the screen. It is south of the 6th concession, north of Laurier Parkway. And the air photo depicts the entire limits of the lands, but the request in question is just for phase 1, which is just north of the existing hedgerow shown on the property. And so just as a refresher, this slide depicts the draft plan of subdivision that's being proposed. There's 47 single detached lots, 22 attached street townhome units, 2 medium density residential blocks, and 1 neighborhood commercial block that fronts along the 6th concession. And so just to provide a recap of the rezoning request, we had the public meeting in October of 2023. And at that time, we resorted to the second part of the recommendation that reads, if issues at the public planning meeting arise that are not immediately resolved, then a summary of those issues along with a final recommendation on the application will follow by way of a future planning report. So you have that planning report in front of you now, and we are going to discuss the recommendations. And so to provide a summary of those issues that were identified, we identified 3 key issues at that public planning meeting in October. And they dealt with the notion of whether or not there was sufficient on-street and off-street parking. We also talked quite a bit about noise abatement, given the adjacent light industrial operation next to the proposal. And the last one was there seemed to be a concern on the part of council about the proposed reduced lot frontages. So we're just going to go through each of those items and talk about how and why and in what fashion they were addressed. So as it relates to parking, we have on the screen here a site plan, and what the property owner developer decided to do, having heard the concern from council, is to seek a reduced rear yard setback that would allow the built form to be pushed back a little bit further, so that they could accommodate sufficiently 2 cars in the driveway. So you'll see on this drawing that they have places shown where we were able to accommodate 2 cars within the driveway, and implementing that reduced rear yard relief will allow for that to occur. With respect to the noise abatement, we did hear from the adjacent property owner some concerns relative to noise. So the consultant went back and took another look at the noise study and incorporated some of the plans that the existing adjacent property owner had in terms of expanding their existing facility, as well as reflected on the proposed built form for the plan of subdivision. So taking those 2 notions into incorporating them into the report, the resulting recommendations were as follows. So the first one involves implementing a Class 4 designation, Type F warning clause, and supplied ventilation air conditioning for Block 52 only, which is the medium density block that's adjacent to ProPower. And then the second recommendation that followed from the amended noise study, that we register Type E warning clauses on all future agreements of purchase and sale within the proposed plan of subdivision. So those are the warning clauses and the recommendations that will flow through into the plan of subdivision as conditions of draft plan approval. With respect to the proposed reduced lot frontages, the proposed reduced lot frontages are going to remain as they have shown. The applicant has decided to continue on with those proposed reduced lot frontages, and we just wanted to sort of contextualize that in the context of, you know, the current economic climate, housing affordability and intensification. So those are all issues and pressures that are currently being faced from the community and everywhere, quite frankly. And so the reduced lot frontages allow for, you know, perhaps a more attainable housing and built form. So we feel that the request is very reasonable from a planning perspective. We're in a new sort of policy framework that promotes intensification, and this is in line with those intensification policy provisions. And I think it's important to note that, you know, smaller lots do not necessarily mean a lesser product. And so just because the lots are a bit smaller, it doesn't mean that, you know, that necessarily compromises on the built form. So this is just a snapshot of a rendering of what's being proposed to be built in that location. So I think it's indicative of, you know, just because we're going to perhaps see reduced lot frontages here, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be of a lesser product. We did want to do just a bit of a jurisdictional scan, if you will, on what we're seeing around the region and around the province in terms of reduced frontages in the context of affordability, attainability, intensification. And so the site-specific zoning that's being requested tonight, for single detached, they're seeking a minimum of 13 meters, and on the street townhouse unit, on a per unit basis, they're looking for 6 meters. So our current zoning bylaw goes as far as to suggest a minimum of 15 meters. But on our street townhouses per unit, we're looking at, we have a current 9 meter provision in the R2 zone, but we also have 6 meters is currently allowed in TC2. So that's sort of something to be mindful of. We're already allowing it in the TC2 zone. However, our R2 zone allows for 9. In the city of Windsor, they go they allow a minimum lot frontage for a single of 9 meters and then 6.5 meters per street townhome dwelling unit. City of London is entertaining, again, reduced lot frontages all the way down to 5.5 meters. In the town of Tecumseh, they're looking at 9 meters for a single and 6 meters for a street townhouse unit. In Kingsville, they're entertaining as low as 10.5 and 5 meters per unit on street townhomes as well. So not that, this is necessarily what we want, but it's just to provide the context that other municipalities are in fact looking at changing, how they plan and what they plan for, given, the current context and the current climate. And so the next steps, should council endorse the zoning bylaw amendment, we're going to be back to you a couple of more times on this application. As part of designating Block 52 as a Class 4 noise area, we are required to get an endorsement from council in order to designate that as Class 4. So we will be back to you, provided you endorse the zoning amendment request. We'll be back to you on March 12th. And we'll be taking the bylaw forward at that time as well, should council endorse the recommendation tonight. And then we'll also be back to you for a report to council for a resolution in support of the draft plan of subdivision. So we're not done here. There's a little bit of work still to do yet, but generally these are the steps that we would be taking if we get an endorsement tonight. I understand there's a delegate in the audience that perhaps wishes to speak, and we also have the developer and the developer's agents here tonight in the event that council has more specific questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beggs. So I will ask our delegate if he'd still like to come forward. John Ben?
Hello, my name is John Ben, and I'm the Vice President of the lawfully established business ProPower Manufacturing Incorporated, with our facility located at 5000 Howard Business Parkway. Our President, John Coulthard, cannot attend today's meeting due to a family commitment and asked that I read his comments today on his behalf. The following issues and comments are made with regards to the rezoning application Z022022 and staff report number PD052024. Please note that within this presentation, we refer to your team. When we do that, we mean the applicant, the applicant's qualified expert, and town administration. And when we refer to our team, we mean ProPower Manufacturing Incorporated and our qualified expert. Our qualified expert is RWDI Consultant Engineers and was responsible for ProPower obtaining our environmental compliance from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks for all of our sources of emissions. Although report PD052024 appears to address the concerns we brought forward at the October 10th, 2023 public meeting on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application, it falls short in doing so. The most critical issue for us is following the D6 guidelines in the implementation of the NPC 300 properly to ensure that future residents are minimally or unaffected at all by the industrial site. In reading through the report, we have been left without any explanation as to why our request reference documentation we provided and comments we made at the public meeting haven't been fully addressed. Individual attempts at communicating with our president were made on 3 occasions to convince him that the D6 and the NPC 300 didn't need to be applied completely to the proposed subdivision. Mr. Coulthard was contacted shortly after the public meeting by Alan Burgess, who suggested that the NPC 300 was easy to apply for the Sterling Lake subdivision because of its enormous size. But this new development is not much more than 300 by 300 meters in size. In the new year, at the town's request, David Ublansky contacted Mr. Coulthard. From that conversation, it was clear that Mr. Ublansky has relied on his qualified noise expert, who has diminished the need to fully implement the NPC 300, and therefore has located Block 52 touching the corner of the industrial site. Figure 3 from PD 052024 clearly shows how close Block 52 is to the industrial site. Our president was very recently contacted by Christina Burchick, I hope I got that right, to inform him of this meeting and the report she would be sending the council, recommending their support of the zoning application. At that time, Christina also provided a copy of the Dillon report to Mr. Coulthard, as it had previously not been shared. She has also very kindly provided a link to the council agenda, which included her attached report to council for our review, which was greatly appreciated as a kind gesture in team building. All three contacts were told the same thing by Mr. Coulthard. Our position was and is for the town of LaSalle to implement these 6 guidelines and follow the recommendations of the MPC 300. We were opposed to sensitive land uses in Block 52, and the proper Type E and Type F warning clauses should be put in place as recommended. Mr. Coulthard is not a qualified expert, so he asked his qualified expert to review the Dillon report. The review that we commissioned of the Dillon report by RWDI is provided as attachment 1, which we'll provide to the council later. RWDI concludes that the Dillon report was well written, but raises a few important issues that would also question the height of the street townhouses in Block 48, 49, and 50, and the impact on these if they were tall enough to receive noise from our location over the proposed NC2 zone. We have many rooftop emission sources that are around 9 meters high, which is why this is a concern. It also recommends some of the same changes to the subdivision that we also recommend at the end of this presentation. The focus of your team has been specifically on ProPower Manufacturing Incorporated and its noise. But the real issue here is that 5000 Howard Business Parkway is an industrial site. Although ProPower is currently operating from this location, it is imperative that the property itself continues to be viable and marketable as an industrial site long after all of the sensitive commercial businesses and sensitive land use homes have been built. The objective of the D6 guidelines is to prevent or minimize the encroachment of sensitive land use upon industrial land use and vice versa. As these 2 types of land uses are normally incompatible due to possible adverse effects on sensitive land uses created by industrial operations. The D6 guideline is intended to be applied in the land use planning process to prevent or minimize future land use problems due to the encroachment of sensitive land uses and industrial land uses on one another. Your team and our team agree that under the D6 guidelines that 5000 Howard Business Parkway is a Class 2 industrial site. Your team and our team agree that as defined by the MPC 300 that 5000 Howard Business Parkway is an existing industrial site that falls under Class 4 designation due to the fact that the industrial site was established and existed prior to the proposed new sensitive land uses. Your team and our team agree that acoustic sound source barriers and Block 52 property line acoustic barriers are not feasible. Where our team diverges from your team is in the implementation of the D6 and MPC 300 in accordance to the recommendations outlined within them. Your team is erroneously applying the MPC 300 Class 4 designation and Type F warning clause to only Block 52. The reality, and what was done for Sterling Lakes, is that the Class 4 designation and Type F warning clause be applied to all lands within the proposed subdivision for 300 meters from the industrial site. Our team also disagrees that the medium density proposed R3 zone sensitive land use for Block 52 be allowed within 70 meters of the industrial site lot line. A warning clause alone does nothing to prevent or minimize future land use problems due to the encroachment of sensitive land uses on the industrial land uses. The next steps that we propose, 1, we request that council reject the zoning bylaw amendment application as presented in report PD 052024 in favor of a compatible land use strategy to prevent or minimize future land use problems due to the encroachment of sensitive land uses and industrial land uses on one another, like was done for Sterling Lakes. We request council to instruct administration to present any future zoning amendment made to the subject lands with the Class 4 designation included directly within the zoning designation. We request council to instruct administration to ensure properly worded Type E and Type F warning clauses be included in any future subdivision agreement for the subject lands as required. Given the level of and types of activity occurring at the rear of the industrial site directly adjacent to the proposed development, we further recommend council to instruct administration to use the following wording for the warning clauses. For the Type F warning clause, we propose that the warning clause read as follows. Purchasers, tenants are advised that due to the proximity of the adjacent industry municipally known as 5000 Howard Business Parkway, LaSalle, sound levels are required to comply with sound level limits that are protective of indoor areas and are based on the assumption that windows and exterior doors are closed. This dwelling unit has been supplied with a ventilation and air conditioning system, which allows windows and exterior doors to remain closed. For the Type E warning clause, we propose the following wording. Purchasers, tenants are advised that due to the proximity of the adjacent industry, municipally known as 5000 Howard Business Parkway, LaSalle, noise and other emissions from the industry may at times be audible and noticeable and may occasionally interfere with some activities of the dwelling occupants. And then 4, we request council to instruct administration and the applicant to consider the following solutions to the compatibility issues with the industrial site. Relocate the storm water management from Block 54 to Block 52 and move the medium density proposed for Block 52 to Block 54 to create a buffer between the industrial site and the rest of the subdivision, a recommendation supported by RWDI. And then B, zone Block 52 as NC2 in addition to Block 53, like was done for Sterling Lakes as a site-restrictive neighborhood commercial zone that will only permit the following non-noise sensitive land uses: personal service, pharmacy, deli, financial institution, office, and small-scale retail store. And then C, relocate the open space from Block 55 to Block 52 and move the medium density proposed for Block 52 to Block 55 to create a buffer between the industrial site and the rest of the subdivision, a recommendation also supported by RWDI. And lastly, 5, we request council to instruct administration to include our team in a meeting where all the players can sit down together to ensure the best outcome possible for everyone. We thank council for their time and consideration of our request as we endeavor to ensure compatibility with our future neighbors. Sincerely, John Coulthard.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go back to administration first before I go to council, just to see if there's any comments to what was proposed. Obviously, there was a lot of information in there, so I guess cover the points that you can at this time.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, John, for your representations. There is a lot there, and I can appreciate what you're saying. Some of those suggestions to council are actually already being recommended in the noise study. For example, the wording that you're suggesting for the Type E and Type F warning clauses, what you read is verbatim, what is in the report, and that will be incorporated. Some of the other suggestions might be a bit trickier, but certainly if the applicant is amenable, then you know it is possible. But at the current moment in time, his proposal is represented by what's shown on the draft plan of subdivision. I will say to your comment about not following the D6 MP 300 guidelines, I think that the acoustical expert has a duty and a responsibility to follow those guidelines. And so it's my understanding that those guidelines are properly applied in the analysis, and that the model that was taken into consideration does apply those recommended and required guidelines, and that's how the recommendations were derived. I don't know if perhaps Casey or Mr. Ublansky has any additional comments relative to the delegation, but I think at this time that's all I have to add.
Thank you. Do you have a copy that you wanted to share? If we can, if you want to just give that over to our clerk, deputy clerk there, and she can disperse them. Thank you. Councillor Carrick.
Thanks. Okay, so I guess I need some clarification around the acoustics and the noise, basically. Because when you're looking at talking about lot 52. So when we just dealt with the condominium that was built just, I guess it would be west, and then that development as it moves toward their industrial site. And then you look at the streets across, the homes, how close they are across the street. And then as it moves closer, so I'm just trying to gauge the distance and what they're talking about for acoustics, just so I know in my mind the noise. Because right across the street, those semis are close. So when you're talking about 53, that's not even close to the building itself, from what I can see on this map. So I just wanted some clarification around how that works, because the homes across the street are really close. And I know as this development west moves east, they're gonna get closer too, and that's why they put the berm in. But I just wanna know the difference in what we're talking about here, because I can see 53 could be closer if I try to measure it from there across the street when I look at the homes there. But when I'm looking at 52, that's quite a distance back. So can you just explain to me what the difference is?
Thank you for the question. So 53 technically isn't considered a sensitive land use because it's commercial in nature. So there aren't necessarily any recommendations, noise recommendations that need to be applied because it's not technically considered a sensitive land use. With respect to the properties across the street, it's a very good question. I don't know what would have been implemented at the time when those properties were developed. We'd have to go back and look to see if the same recommendations fell out of a noise study when that development came forward. But I would imagine that due to the proximity, it also would have triggered a noise study, which would have required certain recommendations to be applied as part of the development approval process.
Okay, and then just looking at, sorry, thank you. So I'm not sure that clears it up. I guess we'll have to kind of look and see what the difference is, because if I want to okay this, then I'd like to make sure that I'm doing the right thing here, or denying it, or vice versa, whatever. But I guess the entrance, is that the only entrance that's there, that's right across from Heritage Drive? Because I live on Heritage Drive, right across the street. So I just want to make sure that there's going to be ample turning and stuff for you to, whoever can answer that.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councilor Carrick. That is the only entrance at the moment. Eventually, Heritage Drive will continue through and connect to Laurier. At the time of this first phase, there's not really any, through the traffic study, there wasn't really any upgrades identified, but at some point in time, there likely will be upgrades required at that intersection. But for this amount of volume that's being added because of this phase, nothing at this time.
Okay, so it's sufficient then for this present time? Okay, thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Burns.
I was here when we built the semis across the street, and I can tell you that's a few years ago, and we've not gotten one complaint. And your President, John, has been here before us many times, and noise is his concern. And the fact that whatever we're building there in residential, that it complies with the noise bylaw, because again, if people are not happy, they're going to obviously have concerns, and those concerns will come to council, and I'm sure some will go to your facility as well. But that's been well defended in those developments, and I believe that we've covered all the bases. We have a difference of opinion by consultants, and sitting here not being a consultant, if I write the report for myself and my property, it's certainly going to favor me. And if I'm the town, I believe that we have a due diligence to make sure that it complies and doesn't affect anyone else. So I'm personally, I'm happy that the applicant has 2 parking spots per unit that we requested, and a couple of other minor changes, and your president was here at that time and he raised the same concern. I'm certainly going to go ahead with this process. I think we've done our due diligence, and I would certainly, there'll be other steps as I've been told, and I believe your request for your firm and its president, John, to be at those meetings. I think that's something that administration should give a courtesy so that you're there and you understand as we're going forward. So at this particular time, if there's no other questions from council, I'm prepared to make a motion to proceed and include ProPower in the next step as we go, so that there's no missing areas, I guess, and concerns that he has, and rightly so. You want to be good neighbors, and he's always expressed that. And that's not just for this development, but for the one across the street. And his concern is valid, and we don't want to build something where someone moves in there unknowingly, and you do have stampings, and I understand that in there. And I think you've mitigated everything, because I can tell you in my 25 years on council, I have not, and I checked last time, had any concerns from the residents. I had more over the crematorium up the street when that was built by the residents on the opposite side of the street. So that's all I'm going to say. If somebody seconds the motion or there's other questions, then I think we should proceed, George.
Thank you. Any other questions? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. More so just a comment to the team before us. You've done your due diligence, and I understand. I understand that you have been there. I understand what your concern is. I understand you want to be good neighbors. I understand every time you or a representative from your organization comes to us, it's never been stop it. It's always been, we know what's going to happen 3 years down the road, and we're going to be on the receiving end of the concern. My father lived close to your facility before he moved, so I asked him about this, and he said, I don't hear anything. He's since moved out of LaSalle, which makes me sad, but the time that I spent there and close to the facility knowing this was coming, again, to my colleague's point, nobody can say that you as a industry in the town of LaSalle have not been a good neighbor. Absolutely no one. Every single time a representative comes here, it's concern, and it's concern not about what we're doing now, it's concern about when they build and they buy and we work, what's going to happen then. So to Mr. Burns's point, I would appreciate if the CAO, the CEO is included in further conversation to make sure that we have that level of understanding. Because again, very rarely in our collective experience do we have industry that's responsible. Not that there's irresponsible industries, but industries that have come so many times to say, we don't want to stop it, we just want to raise our concerns now so you can not have to deal with the complaints later. So I appreciate the presentation, I appreciate the information, and to my colleague's point, I'd like to see their CEO or designate involved in the discussions as we go forward to make sure we have that open conversation, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I just have a couple. I agree with everything that's been said. Thank you for coming forward and sharing concerns, and it's really the concerns for future residents of the town of LaSalle. I am happy to see that the proper wording for type E and F, or the warning clauses, will form part of those agreements so that everyone is well aware. I think that's a really important step. I'm also want to say thank you for coming up with a solution for the parking, because that really was a concern when we were talking about that subdivision, and we're trying to create a subdivision that creates more affordable living, and sometimes that does mean that there's multiple families, or a couple different single people living in the home, which means multiple vehicles, and we're starting to see that as a concern on our roadways. So thank you for coming up with some sort of solution there to make sure we had that option available. And with that, I think we have a motion, which is a mover, sorry, for the motion, which was that the report of the manager of planning and development dated January 29, 2024 regarding zoning bylaw amendment Z02-2022 be received, and that council supports the requisite zoning bylaw amendment be brought forward for council's consideration at a subsequent council meeting. As well, we are adding in a request that a delegate be included in those conversations from ProPower. Correct? Yes. And we have support from Deputy Mayor. So all in favor? No one's opposed. That carries. Thank you very much. Okay, item 4. So item 4 is 1680 and 1690 Orford Street draft plan of subdivision and removal of holding symbol. And we are going to go to the Director of Planning and Building, I believe. Is that? No? I see, I got this. I'm not sure which way this is going. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So before you up on the screen, I have up a aerial image and the draft plan of subdivision, and this is for the Orford Street subdivision. So I'm presenting to you tonight for the application for a draft plan of subdivision for Orford Street, as well as a request to remove the holding symbol off the subject lands. The subject property is 0.95 hectares of land, which is located on the north side of Orford and west of Malden and directly west of Newman Boulevard, as you can see up on the screen. The property is designated Town Center District within our official plan, and it is zoned Town Center 2, TC2, with a holding symbol currently on it. What's being proposed here is 21 freehold townhouse dwellings. They will be street orientated. And they're also proposing, as you can see in the grayed out area on the draft plan image to the right, a new street with a cul-de-sac at the end in order to service the subdivision. Speaking on the newly proposed road to be developed within the subdivision, a reduced right-of-way is being permitted, which is consistent within our official plan policies, and that's in line with the fact that the proposed 15.2 meter right-of-way can be supported in that 2.5 meter easements will be supplied on either side, both the east and west side of the proposed new road here. With that, I'd also like to mention that administration is also requiring sidewalks on both the east and west side of this proposed Street A. I'd also like to include that within the peach kind of colored area on the drawing on the screen, that is the existing alley running throughout the subject property that has been requested to be closed and sold to developer, which will then be included as part of the land to make up for the development proposal. Further, the subdivision proposal will connect into the existing municipal services that are provided on Orford, and they will be extended northernly into the newly proposed street here. I wanted to make note that the developer here is proposing townhouse dwellings, which are proposed to be freehold in the future. And in doing that, that means that whatever point in time they see appropriate, they'll be coming back to council to request a part lot control. And that's in order to, of course, subdivide the dwelling into the separate units so that they can sell off each unit into individual owners. And another item I'd like to highlight is you could see the green highlighted portion on the drawing I've included. That's known as Block 8, and that portion of land has been determined environmentally sensitive, and there's no plans to develop that portion of land. And since it's not suitable for development, it's been, the developer has proposed to dedicate that portion of land to the town. And it's been also suggested that because the LaSalle Fairy Forest is just to the north, that perhaps it'd be a nice area for a trail to connect to the fairy forest there, to go through those lands. And so, as a final note here, I'd like to mention that I'd recommend that council support the draft plan of subdivision for the Orford Street subdivision. And I'd also, like to note that Mr. Miller, the agent, and also Mr. LaPera, the developer, are online and available if you have any questions that may be directed to them. Otherwise, I'm also happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members of council, do you have any questions or comments for administration or for Mr. Miller or Mr. LaPera who are online? Councilor Burns.
In the environmental sensitive area where the cul-de-sac is, Block B, and I don't know what that other little piece is, one going east, one going west. How big is that little on the cul-de-sac between, it looks like Wellington Crescent? How that little narrow strip in the middle, how wide is that? Like, is that a foot, 2 feet, 5 feet? If you go back to your picture, yeah, that little narrow one at the end, so it would be lot 291, and it goes over to lot 107. So on that, how narrow is it to that street allowance that's there? Is it a foot? Or are those two pieces of environmental property going to be separate pieces without connectivity between the both of them? Thank you.
We're guesstimating about a meter-ish, meter and a half maybe wide, so 3 or 4 feet, that piece there.
I don't think that's enough, and you know, I don't know how big the cul-de-sac is, but it, in my estimation, should be maybe a little less at the back of these properties to increase that maybe to at least, I don't know, 2 meters. I'll give you 12 feet. Because I don't know how you're going to stop the deer from running through there. And they're not going to go on a 3-foot path. We just had an experience at the Volmer. So that is my concern, and that could be addressed with Mr. LaPera and as well Mr. Solani in your negotiations.
Just if you could maybe clarify, so I realize we're speaking specifically to this development, but Wellington Crescent, is that not a wooded area? It is, right? Like, it's just, this is more or less just an addition to the wooded area behind it.
Thank you very much. I didn't know that. Thanks for the clarification.
Councillor Carrick?
So through you, just so I'm looking at the proposed area. So the homes to the right and to the left as we move from Orford going back toward the creek, there, it looks like there's sufficient room there, like they're not on top, not too close. Is that more than enough of a setback? The areas away from the homes that it's going through? I see Newman Boulevard, right? Am I reading this right? And then on the other side, looks like there's plenty of room there too as well. Am I seeing that right? On the left side, as you go back?
Sorry, I'm not sure where you're
Okay, so
referring to.
I'm talking about how much distance there is between that development and the homes on either side.
There's what?
Just to clarify, so you're asking the distance between the new development and the houses that are pre-existing
Right, so
on
just so that we're
Orford?
not encroaching on them or we're not too close. I just want to make sure that they're not right next door, and it looks like they're not, but I want to make sure.
So when we're looking at the subject lands that you have up in the
Yeah, so-
red surrounding it, on the outside of it, on the left, looking at the screen, is it a wooded area between the subdivision being proposed and the home? Is that what's there right now? And on the other side, is that a street that would divide this new proposal and the homes?
Sure, no, thank you for your question. So currently what's known as Hazelwood Avenue is an unopened road allowance. So they're municipally owned at this time and there's no housing, no development on there right now. So, and to answer your question, there's plenty of space.
Thank you very much, and I guess this might be a premature question, but in regards to parking, we are always worried about the amount of spaces that will be provided. So 2 is always good, 1.5 and 1 isn't. So just want to throw that out there to Mr. Miller, Mr. LaPera.
Mr. Miller or Mr. LaPera, just if you,
Can you hear me?
yes, we can.
Okay, so what's being proposed is the units on each end will have double car garages, so there'll be the ability to park 2 on the end units, and the interior units will have a single car garage.
Okay, the distance of the driveway, so you're saying we're talking 1 vehicle or 2?
There's only sufficient depth in the driveway from the street to the garage for 1 car.
Okay, thank
That's in
you.
addition to the garages.
Right, so basically room for 2 vehicles.
Two
On the-
vehicles,
On the end units.
So
Right,
Kevin,
I'm
wouldn't we have three units on the ends and two in the middle?
Okay, basically what I'm getting at is, it's one car out front for the single car garages. Is that what we're talking about? And is that standard?
So our zoning bylaw requires 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit, so they comply with the bylaw.
Yeah, thank you. Two's better than one, though, just so we know.
Yes, I think that's the same thing we had with the last item on the agenda, is we want to make sure that there's sufficient parking in the residence so that it's not pouring onto the streets or pouring onto Orford and the neighbors. So that's, so what we're hearing is the end units will have the double car garage, and then the inside units will have a single car garage and a single car driveway as well. So 2 vehicles should be parked on their property, not on the roadways. Okay. Any other questions? There being none. My only question, obviously, several of them have already been asked, making sure that we're keeping the environmentally significant areas and that we are making sure we continue being sure that this isn't going to create any flooding issues for the residents that are already there. That's already been part of the project, I'm assuming, looked into, and no concern of that? No. Thank you. So with that, we do have a recommendation. So the recommendations that the report of Manager of Planning dated January 30th, 2024, regarding the Orford Street subdivision proposal be received, and that a council approves the applicant's request to remove the holding symbol from the above noted lands once the required development agreement is properly executed by the corporation, and that council pass a resolution in support of the applicant's request to grant draft plan approval for the proposed Orford Street plan of subdivision in accordance with the draft plan drawing prepared by Hain Land Surveyors, a division of J.D. Barnes Limited, dated December 12th, 2022, subject to the following draft plan approval conditions. A, that the subdivision agreement be entered into with the town to ensure that all required municipal infrastructure and services are designed and built by the applicant to the satisfaction of the town, and that all required financial contributions be made and are secured to the town, including all required letters of credit, cash, securities, and insurances. B, that Block 8 on the draft plan be gratuitously and conveyed to the town for trail connection purposes. C, that a 6-foot-high permanent fence be erected around the residential lots in accordance with the Endangered Species Act assessment completed by Sage Earth. D, that all identified road allowances be appropriately named and conveyed to the town. E, that the required stormwater management plan be prepared and implemented by the applicant and approved by the Town of LaSalle and Essex Region Conservation Authority. And F, that the cash in lieu of parkland be provided as parkland compensation in accordance with the Planning Act requirements. And that a copy of this council resolution is forwarded to the Manager of Planning Services for the County of Essex, Ms. Rebecca Belanger, together with a copy of this staff report. So that is the recommendation ahead of us.
Move the recommendation.
Moved by Councilor Burns, support by Deputy Mayor Capada. All in favor? No opposed, and that carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining. Item 5 is IRCA Category 3 Non-Mandatory Programs and Services Update, and we're going to have that with the Director of Finance, Mr. Langlois. All right, she's over there.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. So as you may recall, in October, council directed administration to negotiate a cost apportioning agreement with IRCA for the non-mandatory programs and services included within the agreement. So since then, both Windsor and Tecumseh have decided to, exclude the land acquisition services. So we looked a little bit further into that. With IRCA, they sent us a price, or cost with and without. So currently, the non-mandatory services include tree planting, Holiday Beach management, Holiday Beach infrastructure, water quality research and monitoring, watershed stewardship and restoration, John R. Park Museum and Visitor Center operations, curriculum-based outdoor education, the outreach and community engagement, as well as the land acquisition services. So, you know, in the past number of years, we paid into this. This was included in our levy. Now it'd be a separate fee. And we really haven't seen directly in LaSalle a benefit from these land acquisition services. You know, IRCA, we do look at it as a region as a whole, but we really haven't had much land purchased by them in the town for the amount we've been paying into it. So with that being said, you know, when we looked at the price that we'd pay for these services, including the land acquisition, would be just shy of $79,000 annually. If we exclude the land acquisition services, it'd be $28,680. So the annual savings would be just over $50,000 annually. So with that, my recommendation from a financial perspective is that we move forward with the agreement and also exclude the land acquisition services. We could always enter back into it at a future date, but that's $50,000 annually. We could, the whole cost is included in our current budget. So with that being said, if council chooses to, move forward without the land acquisition services, that funding can be used, it can go to the bottom line, or we could use it for our own environmental type services that we could benefit directly in the town of LaSalle. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Kerr, go ahead.
Okay, so this is painful for me because myself and a fellow councillor back in the day started the Green Space Fund, and that was brought forward to Mr. Militia at the time and Mr. Solani. Myself and former councillor asked for them to come up with a formula that everybody in the municipalities would pay into to provide money with funding from the feds and the province. Obviously, things have gone a little south since then. So the concern I have is, and it's really painful, but I understand that Windsor's pulled out and now Tecumseh. So I think I don't want to put our money toward that, somebody else using that money when we can use it good for the environment in our own town. And I would support that not only because of the pullout from Windsor and now Tecumseh. So I don't think our money should go there. I think we can keep it right in town and find something good to do with it here environmentally, whether it's helping with water or land purchasing. That's where I want it to go. I don't want it to go to the bottom line. I want it to go toward that. That's my opinion.
Deputy Mayor?
Councillor Carrick, I think through you, Your Worship, I think Councillor Carrick and I are of one mind. And again, it's unfortunate that other municipalities don't see what IRCA is doing. What I want, to my colleague's point, if we can hold that money, we can use that money for, dare I say, IRCA-like activities in our own municipality. I think we have a responsibility we sat here and talked about butterflies and what it's going to make for our community. I know that other municipalities are thinking quickly. I don't want us to. To my colleague's point, I'd like that $50,000 not to go to the bottom line. I'm not suggesting we spend it, but we hold it in abeyance for an environmental project here so that we can do, dare I say, IRCA-like projects here at the discretion of the group here. I'd like to see us do that, Your Worship. Thank you.
Mr. Militia?
If that is the wish of council, then I would suggest that in addition to approving the recommendation as provided, you would add on a third element which would direct administration to take those budgetary funds and reallocate them to what we know as the Green Fund. The Green Fund is a fund that is designated specifically for property acquisition that is environmentally sensitive. So if that is what the will of council is, then I would suggest that part of it be added to the recommendation.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Burns?
Yes, it's kind of sad when I see our municipality, I guess to the north of us, pull out of this when they, over the years, especially when I was on IRCA, and I'm sure Mr. Carrick and Councillor Carrick can say the same, they benefited the most. They got the most. And we were not chintzy neighbors. And Tecumseh as well has gotten a lot of money through this fund, and it's sad to see it go away because I think it allowed us to acquire very sensitive property and to expand the woodlot from about 3% to probably 7% as we stand today. So I concur with the amendment, and I also concur with putting the money into that type of green fund, and we can use it as things move along, and I'd be prepared to make a motion to do that now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. You don't have to comment, it's okay. I also agree. I think that it's very interesting when you read the report and you see that the City of Windsor and the town of Tecumseh have decided to pull out of this, knowing that they have benefited greatly over the years, and the town of LaSalle hasn't. So we talk regionally and we talk trying to, look at the entire area, but this is one of those situations where we now have kind of been forced into this. We probably would have continued to support the program, but with the removal of Windsor and Tecumseh, and who knows, there could be others to follow, it only makes sense for us now to look at our own municipality, and we've talked about wanting to invest more in our green spaces. I think 16% is the number I hope that's still out there, and we want to be able to grow that, and I think this is a great opportunity to add almost $50,000 into that green fund. So I think this is a perfect opportunity for us to continue to invest in our own hometown and be able to, add on to what we've already started here in the town and invest more in preserving what we can. So I agree completely with everything that's been said. If we can move the recommendation put forward, but add what Mr. Militia said about the funds being put towards the green fund for future use of purchase of lands in our own municipality. So do you need me to read the whole thing, or are we good with that? We are good with that. Thank you. So moved by Councillor Riccio Spagnolo and supported by Councillor Carrick. All in favor? And that carries. Consent agenda. There are 4 items on the consent agenda. Is there anything anyone would speak directly to, or can we move them all together? Councillor Burns?
I would like our chief of the fire department to speak to the corporation of the municipality of Calvin with their resolution regarding fire. If you are in support of that resolution, then we can pull it out and support it. And if not, then we'll motion probably to receive them all.
Chief?
Sorry, if you can just give me 1 minute. I'm just going to read it. I didn't read it ahead of time. I'll
That's
take
okay.
a quick look at it.
So what we'll do, we'll pull out the correspondence for now, and we'll deal with items 1, 2, and 4. So we have the 2023 schedule of council and board member remuneration, the 2023 development charges, treasurer's statement, and item 4, which is our summary reports to council. So if we can receive those 3 items, moved by Councillor Burns, support by Councillor Carrick, all in favor. That carries. And then we can go back to the chief and give him a second to review. So he's reviewing the Corporation of the Municipality of Calvin, the Provincial National Firefighting Strategy. And once we get his thoughts, we can either receive or support that correspondence. Is it okay if I hop ahead for one? Because this is just going to be received as well. Yeah. Okay, we'll give the chief another moment. So in the meantime, we'll go to item J, which is just, oh, are you ready? That was fast. You read fast.
Yes, sorry. I did, I had read it a little bit, but I just want to go through a couple of details, and I do support it. It does make sense.
So
I would make a motion that we support it and forward to the proper authorities.
yes, do you want to clarify who the proper authorities are, who you're?
Well, I guess it's the federal government, I thought.
We just want to make sure that the wording is correct.
To the, first to Mr. Blaine, Minister of Ontario.
Okay, that's okay. We just wanted to ensure it was everybody who was there and there was no one else you wanted included or we missed anything. Okay, perfect. So we're not just receiving, we are going to support what is in the letter, and that's moved by Councillor Burns and supported by Deputy Mayor Capata. All in favor? That carries. Item J, our Essex County Council highlights. Recommendation is just to receive the highlights from the February 7th, 2024 meeting. Councilor Richo Spagnolo, Councilor Carrick, all in favor? And that carries. Questions and statements by council members? None? Notices of motion?
Statement,
Yeah,
if I
Councilor
can. A good friend of mine and a fellow colleague of municipalities, Vic Power, who was my guidance teacher in high school, and he may have led me the right way or the wrong way. I won't comment on that, but he certainly got me interested in politics, and I worked in his first campaign. I was probably 17 years old. A fine gentleman from Timmins, the past mayor, and he served as the longest reigning mayor in Timmins as well as a councillor, and he passed away, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention that here because it's a very important person in my life, and thank you for allowing me that.
Any other questions or statements? There being none, notices of motion. I do have one personally, so I'm going to turn the chair over to Deputy.
Hey, Joe.
I understand that you have a notice of motion. If you'd like to read it for everyone, please, ma'am.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So my notice of motion is whereas the council recognizes the importance of community events within the town of LaSalle and for the greater Windsor-Essex community, and whereas the council respects the collection and use of property taxation and council's obligation to be fiscal responsible, and whereas the town of LaSalle has a policy which does not permit the waiving of fees, be it resolved that in recognition of the importance of the 2024 Play for a Cure event, which is held at the Vollmer Recreation Center, that council authorize a one-time payment in the amount of $2,500 in support of the event, and that these funds be drawn from the Mayor and Council Program Services Grants account.
Thank you. Do you have it? Ma'am, I'll cede the chair back to you.
Okay, so no other notices of motion. There's no closed session to report. We will go into our bylaws. And so it's the following bylaw be given a third reading and finally passed, and that's bylaw 8837, a bylaw to provide for the repair improvements of the St. Michael's Drain in the town of LaSalle in the county of Essex. So if we can get that one. Moved Councillor Burns, support Councillor Richo Spagnolo, all in favor? That carries. And that the following bylaw be given a first, second, and third reading and finally passed, and that is bylaw 8859, a bylaw authorize the execution of a cost apportioning agreement between the Corporation of the Town of LaSalle and Essex Region Conservation Authority for a funding contribution for non-mandatory IRCA programs and services. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Burns, all in favor? That carries. And finally, our confirmatory bylaw 8860 be given a first, second, and third reading and finally passed. Councillor Richo Spagnolo, Councillor Carrick, all in favor? That carries. There's a list of meetings below. Thank you for joining us in person. There were people here, I swear, and online. Have a good night.